All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick, recording on Monday morning. We're going to talk today about the Broncos, the 49ers, and then we will touch on the NFL MVP market and close out with the NBA Most Improved Player market. Drew Dinsick has just awoken. We're recording this a little bit earlier than usual, so thanks for getting up early, Drew. Let's talk about my previously hometown Denver Broncos, who are now 6-5 and are basically picked to make the playoffs, coming off their most impressive win of the season against the Falcons. I think we already knew that the defense was very good, but how do you rate the Broncos offense now after what Bo Nix has shown recently?
Yeah, that's a really good way to frame it. The defense is a known quantity. Right now, I rate them third in the NFL, kind of in a pretty clustered tier with the other top five, honestly. And it's kind of fueled by just good coaching, good scheming, and a really solid pass rush and outstanding CB1 play from Pat Surtain. It's kind of a good, complete defense. Now, the offensive side, I have consistently had the Broncos rated in the low 20s. And by low, I mean like 28, 29, 30. They have risen to 26th, which is pretty bad still. But they are on the kind of upswing here. I guess it kind of starts with just what are you seeing from Bo Nix to this point in the season? He is coming off of his by far best EPA generated game with 21.4 generated against the Falcons, via drop back. And he had been kind of struggling to get it done through the air for the most part. And some of it was what they were asking him to do. Other parts were just, it didn't seem like he was necessarily capable of hitting some of the intermediate stuff along the sidelines that really kind of unlocks kind of top tier NFL quarterback play. And he's starting to show some signs of life in that department, which is super positive. And I don't think we should really be surprised. Bo Nix has got a lot of experience. He is with a very, very experienced coach who's made, questionable quarterbacks in the past look very, very reasonable. And I think that, kind of expecting an arc of improvement over the balance of the season was warranted here for the Broncos and Bo Nix in general. He has now put together two consecutive positive EPA games for the first time this season. And he's still on balance, negative EPA per drop back, negative total EPA for the season because he dug himself such an enormous hole in the Seahawks game week 1 and the Jets game week 4. But he, even in the lopsided scoreboard loss to the Ravens 3 games ago, he was fine. Like the plays were there. He was just a hair off in terms of connecting with some of his receivers down the field, and those connections are starting to become more frequent. And I think there's probably a reasonable expectation that he continues to improve. Right now, again, like I would rate him in the 20 to 24 range among all starting quarterbacks, but the chances and the scope for him to get up to say 16, I think, are realistic and reasonable. And a lot of it is the fact that even if he is not having an especially good day passing, he has, I hate to even say it, but he has some Josh Allen qualities when he has his, the ball, as a runner, because he is so athletic and he is quite fast. So, I think there is definitely something to work with there. And this is a huge positive that we have, another, young quarterback that is building success in the league. But I do think that expecting them to go toe for toe with a high-powered offense is really gonna, it's gonna be a tough ask. And you mentioned their likelihood of making the playoffs off the top. I am at 49.8. That is all wild card probability. They have no chance of running down the Chiefs. And as I look at the schedule, there's a game the second to last week of the season in Cincinnati that I think is largely going to decide who gets the 7th seed between the Broncos and the Bengals. Bengals are going to have to string together win between now and then and be 8-7 in that game. But I think that realistically, we're looking at a clash between Bengals Broncos that will decide the final playoff spot. And if Bo Nix does not continue on his arc, then I think they're in trouble on the road in that one.
Interesting. I actually think that 2 weeks before that, when the Broncos host Indianapolis, I think that might
Ooh.
end up being for the last spot. I think the Bengals are in real trouble now, even though they have a pretty favorable schedule. Just having 7 banked losses is pretty nuts. So I think it might be not curtains, but I've got the Bengals like 5-1 type of range fair to make the playoffs now. So certainly uphill sledding. Let's jump to the 49ers, who are our stock down team. As we mentioned yesterday's show, they are dogs in Green Bay. Expect that Nick Bosa probably not going to play, which is a problem given that the defense seems to completely fall apart. Without him against Seattle, they are now plus 200 to make the playoffs, the San Francisco 49ers, which is jarring to say out loud. I have them plus 216 fair, so I don't think it's totally off or anything. In the market, they're plus 325 to win the NFC West. I have them longer than that. What do you think is the primary thing that is wrong with this team at the moment?
Boy, fragility on the defensive side. Like you kind of mentioned, they are counting on individual outsized performance from the Nick Bosas and the Fred Warners to kind of make up for a number of other areas where injuries and just in general a thin roster is sort of limiting them. The defense is a weak link system, and I think the facts are there's a lot of weak links on the field. And I think in general, a team like the Seahawks, who is well coached, who had extra time to prepare for you, and who is very familiar with preparing for you, was kind of the ideal poor matchup for them this week. And then you compound that with the injuries sustained in game, and it all kind of rolled downhill. I am pointing the lens almost surely at the defensive side here for the Niners, because that's the kind of rating that really deserves scrutiny. They are coming down the stretch going to play a number of very good quarterbacks who can really, really put some serious pressure on you. And this week is very much included in that conversation. The Packers-Niners matchup is going to be almost entirely informed by the Niners' ability to stop the big plays in the passing game for the Packers. The flip side of the equation, the Niners offense, I think, is still an elite unit. I would make them 7th in the NFL right now, like a far cry from number 1 with a bullet that they were this time last year. But that's what happens when you are missing kind of the kind of a tried and true receiving target for a quarterback like Purdy and Brandon Ayuk. Like that chemistry that we saw from those two players in particular last year was enough to really elevate this team. I thought Kyle Shanahan's play calling was a little bit more unique and impressive, and just a little bit less expected and predictable last year than it has been so far this season. And I think that it's weird to say that Purdy is having as good or better season than he was, last year, where he was, a leading candidate for MVP, and now he's scuffling on very much on the outside of looking in of the playoff picture. But it feels like the rest of the pieces around him aren't doing their part this year to a degree, and I think as Christian McCaffrey gets more reps, gets kind of back up to game speed, knocking on wood that he doesn't sustain an injury to his Achilles, I think that this Niners team is still going to be a problem down the stretch. But yeah, I mean, overall right now, I would have gone to war saying this should be your top power rated team as recently as a month ago. And now I feel like they are pretty clearly in, tier 2, where if they're much better than, a field goal over average, then maybe you should be scratching your head about why exactly you feel confident in that.
Yeah, I mean, the issue for them is, and I still think they are a little bit better than that, but like their schedule is just horrific. Like there's no easy game outside of home Chicago in 3 weeks. Outside of that, at Green Bay, at Buffalo, home Rams, at Miami, home Detroit, at Arizona. Like these are all bloodbaths, and they're 5-5, and their wild card path, as you mentioned, is dried up for the most part. So they really have to win the division, and they're behind everyone in the division for tie breaks. So and I think that their issue is I think the defense is like, it just is what it is. Like, I don't think it's markedly different in terms of quality from last year, outside of if Bosa is going to miss time, then obviously that's a huge drop off. But for the most part, like, the defense has been fine. Like, it's been an average to a slightly above average defense. The issue has been that the offense, which was kind of tier one by itself level last year, is now just a merely very good offense. And just watching the games like last year, I remember having a big position on the Niners in that game where they went into Philadelphia as like 2.5-point favorites, and the Eagles were, doing their Eagles thing of just winning every close game, and they were 9-1 or whatever. And just the sense that the Niners are just going to score every single time they get the ball. And that sense of inevitability is just gone, where now it just kind of, it looks like the way that the Bengals offense looks like, or the Eagles or the Cardinals offense looks like, these good offenses that do not feel inevitable. And Ayuk missing is a problem there. And, they're going to go the whole season without playing, their strongest offensive lineup, given that Ayuk is never going to get a chance to play with McCaffrey this year. And it just isn't clicking at the moment, and they're committing silly penalties, and the special teams are the worst I've ever seen, and just they're losing around the edges, and they just don't seem to have that margin anymore with the personnel getting older or being injured. So they're in big trouble, which bodes well for the Lions and Eagles in particular in the NFC, because they're likely going to be able to go through the NFC without having to face the team that is still, I think by any measure, still one of the three best teams in the NFC, but they're probably not going to be there.
So when you were commenting, you think they are a little bit better than 3 points, better than an average on neutral. Is that with Bosa or like
with
this
Bosa?
week?
Yeah, with Bosa. Okay. And so without Bosa, I think that it makes the Packers line make a bit more sense. I would still be taking San Francisco, but it feels like, particularly for that defense, some teams are better equipped to be able to replace their superstar going down. I guess it's not a perfect comparison, but like if TJ Watt goes down and Alex Highsmith is healthy, like at least you have Alex Highsmith and you have other guys on the defensive line who can create disruption. With the Niners, like there's really no one else on the D line outside of Nick Bosa. Like it's him and then a huge drop off to everyone. Geno was much more comfortable, it felt like, naturally after Bosa left the game. So I think that'll have kind of outlier type ripple effects across the rest of the unit if he misses time, which I'm guessing he's probably going to miss time, given that that was maybe their season on the line and he couldn't come back in. So that is a big problem.
Well,
all right.
Good news for them. If they save their season at Green Bay this week, then they just got to go and save their season again at Buffalo next week. So,
they get to play the Lions and the Dolphins and the Cardinals. It's not going to get easier. All right, Notre Dame continues the march towards the college football playoff, and this Saturday night they take on Army at Yankee Stadium. NBC and Peacock will lead you up to kickoff, starting at 7 p.m. Eastern. All right, let's touch on the NFL MVP market, which is somewhat reshaped after Josh Allen had his Heisman moments with the scramble touchdown on 4th down against Mahomes to bring the 1 seed into play and to vault him into MVP favoritism. He is plus 150. Lamar Jackson is plus 200. Jared Goff from the Ashes, allegedly, after his 5-pick game, torches the Jags, moves into plus 650. I think he's a bit generous to Goff, not to bettors. Patrick Mahomes may have thrown the towel in yesterday. He is 12-1. And then Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert. I don't think any of these guys are going to win MVP. But do you have any bets to make in this market now?
And this is I'm going to try to not sound reactionary, but I think this is if you have not gotten on the Lamar Jackson train to this point, I think this is your last stop to get on. And I say that in part because I still have very high likelihood that the Ravens win the AFC North. And even in the absence of that, they're very clearly locked into a playoff spot in a weak AFC overall. So I think that his numbers are going to support his case, even in the absence of, what may be, one of those priority premier playoff seeding spots. We're getting into dangerous territory here where, the overall team success is going to fuel people's perceptions of Josh, and Josh he has plenty of pedigree and plenty of anchoring, and is not throwing as many interceptions this year, which people are going to lean into. And as you mentioned, he has the high leverage, bombs that you can point to that have really helped swing specific games for the Buffalo Bills. But he's been a yak merchant in the passing department this year. And I don't even really like saying anything derogatory about Josh Allen because he's one of my favorite players to watch. He's just it's a joy to have him in the NFL. But what he's doing this year does not feel especially impressive, and it would be kind of it would break my brain if this was the year that he was to get the credit, just because he hasn't been throwing interceptions, and that's the only reason, really. I still have a huge, and maybe like this is kind of a multi-part puzzle. I still have a almost a full game gap in terms of expected wins between the Chiefs and the Bills based on remaining schedule. And because of that, I think Bills are pretty likely the 2 seed. And his 2 seed candidacy is a little bit muddier. He lost to Lamar head-to-head. He lost to C.J. Stroud head-to-head. He won the Chiefs game because of that heroic 4th down run. But, there's still some questions about his candidacy in my mind. And I don't mind a reactionary market that is kind of holding up his success yesterday as a good reason for him to be the favorite. But I think it's a bet against a plus 150. And if I had to take a pick, it would be Lamar at 2-1, just because I think those prices are backwards.
Yeah, I don't think that's unreasonable. I think that at the end of the day, Allen is going to get all the buzz this week, and he's going to be the MVP elect in the content cycle. But he's that way not because of statistics that he compiled in that game against the Chiefs, but because of a moment and the result, which is key as well. But the moments in week 11 just do not matter as much come voting time, as opposed to the fact that, the win is crucial, but he had an 83 passer rating against the Chiefs. He had 1 passing touchdown, 1 interception. It's not like he juiced his numbers. And when you compare his numbers to Lamar, it's still not close. Like, Lamar is lapping. Josh Allen is 12th in the NFL in passer rating. Lamar is 1st. Lamar is 2nd in QBR behind Burrow. Allen is 4th. EPA, it's still Lamar. Lamar is kind of lapping him in passing yards, and also Lamar has more rushing value. Lamar Jackson has just been a better quarterback than Allen. And I think if the case for Allen at the end of the year is, well, Allen's a 2 seed and Lamar's a 3 seed, I just don't think that's going to really matter. If it's Allen's a 2 seed and Lamar Jackson's a wild card, I think that is where it starts to tilt towards Allen. And then if Allen is the 1 seed and Lamar is a 3 seed or a wild card or whatever, then at that point I think Allen would win. But he's still, to your point, it's still uphill to get the 1 seed. And also, I just think that Lamar, his stats project a little bit better going forward. Allen has a harder schedule. Allen's next 2 games, he's going to play the Niners and the Lions, and he's very likely going to lose one of those 2 games, at which point the case will deflate a little bit. He wouldn't be dead by any means, but it would deflate. Whereas Lamar always has this, pristine statistical case to fall back on. So I agree. I think they should be pretty close. I think the fact that Lamar's stats are better kind of balances out against the fact that, Allen now has a realistic pathway to the 1 seed. So I think they should be neck and neck. What I think is most interesting is if you start drawing up the chaos scenarios, which is that, Allen doesn't get the 1 seed. Say he loses both of those games to the Niners and Lions, or say that, he splits them and then he loses another game down the road and he's just kind of the 2 seed with the 3rd best stats of everyone, because Burrow, I think, is going to end up with better numbers too, even if he's not a candidate. And then say Lamar Jackson loses the AFC North, which is hugely in play now, that he's down the tiebreak to Pittsburgh. Who do you think is the 3rd most likely person to win MVP?
I hate this question because I will start by looking at total EPA, and we're coming off of the most spectacular game by a single quarterback all season with Jared Goff's performance against the Jags team that was 3-2-1 Cancun yesterday. And that shouldn't matter for MVP, but it does. And he's right now in total his total EPA at number 2, ahead of Josh Allen and just passing, which is important and amazing. His 4 interception performance last week feels like a fever dream as opposed to something that actually happened. And I think that just in general, the Lions are a really fun story to talk about and to tell. They're going to play on Thanksgiving coming up here, which is going to get a ton of attention. They have some huge games down the stretch, including a standalone game against the Niners. That's going to mean a lot for seeding and for just their kind of cementing their legacy of this being a dynamite team this year, at least in the regular season. And so it should probably be Goff. I currently, in my projections for the NFC, have a very narrow gap between Lions and Eagles for the 1. And I think that has to do with schedule. The Eagles, if they get the 1 seed out from under the Lions, their conference win probability flips on its head. It's so much better. And just in general, there's no real candidacy for Hurts, even though he's near the top of the board, in my opinion. He's been kind of meh, and it's been mostly the defense that has really elevated the Eagles. So it's a little head scratching there. He's 12th in EPA generated, and I would put him as far as candidacy behind Murray personally. I think the door is open for Goff to storm in, which seems impossible. But in a year where you have 3 bona fides and Jackson, Allen, Mahomes all kind of fighting for top seeding in the AFC, the fact that Goff could steal it is kind of melting my brain.
Yeah, well, I think that Goff, I think he is probably the right answer to be the 3rd most likely, just because that team now has a realistic path to going like 16-1, and also Goff gets to play Allen himself, so there's some positive correlation there where Goff can, not end Allen's candidacy, but put a massive dent in it. And then week 17, Goff plays in San Francisco, and Goff's issue. 1, the numbers just aren't great. He's 14th in QBR. He's 20 touchdowns to 9 picks, which doesn't live in the same world as Lamar and Allen. Right. And also his other issue is just kind of pedigree. No one thinks Jared Goff is as good as these guys. But he has chances to kind of correct the pedigree with these big games that he'll play. It's just a very narrow path. Like, I don't think there's any meat on the bone whatsoever at his current price. I think that you can make a case. I think Goff is the 3rd most likely, but I think the 4th most likely guy to win MVP now, if I had to bet my life on soldiers, and I would take a coin flip for Lamar, Allen 1st and 2nd, Goff 3rd. I think 4th would be Saquon Barkley, because I think he is the candidate for Philadelphia over Jalen Hurts. And I think there are worlds, because he gets to play Lamar in 2 weeks. And if he goes into Baltimore, number 1 rush defense, all of that, he goes off in a win against the Ravens, then it's going to get loud. And I think the good thing for Barkley is, 1, he has a path to the 1 seed, which I think is key. 2, I think there is a good chance that the quarterbacks with the 2 best statistical cases to win MVP are Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. And if Barkley beats Lamar, that makes Lamar a pretty decent favorite to be a wild card. And, Burrow's not going to win MVP. And then at that point, you kind of you have Lamar and Burrow blocking all these other candidates. And if the 2 1 seeds are Patrick Mahomes having the worst season of his career statistically, and Jared Goff, and Saquon is 2K rushing yards and has beaten Lamar head to head, I do think there are worlds where Saquon can win, and I would have him 4th. Do you think that the voter base is too sophisticated now, where it's just not going to go to it's just purely a quarterback award? Or do you think that, if McCaffrey had gone off in the second half against the Ravens on Christmas, that he actually would have won MVP, and that, there are worlds where Saquon and a running back can win?
I think there are worlds where this year in particular, where the names at the top from a quarterback standpoint are, kind of very well established in Allen, Jackson, and Mahomes, but their cases all have warts, right? It's like those quarterbacks can specifically push the rest of the group down just based on, anchoring and pedigree. And I think an Eagles 1 seed led by a Barkley, kind of dominating the, delivering fantasy champions to every single voter, right? Like that. There is absolutely a world where he gets rewarded in that degree, and I mean, his price is double Joe Burrow's price. That's not right. His price is, yeah, his price. Yeah, it doesn't square with some of the other names at the top. I'll tell you that.
I mean, his price is more than three times Jalen Hurts' price, and I just think Saquon is materially, more like. I just don't think Jalen Hurts can win unless he goes. Like I think he can win, but I would need 80-1. I think at this point to consider Hurts. I just think that like Brock Purdy has no chance to win MVP. CJ Stroud is not winning MVP. Jaden Daniels isn't winning MVP. All of these guys are shorter than Saquon.
And so Darnold, Justin Herbert, these guys aren't winning.
They can't win. I think there are worlds where Saquon can win. And I mean, if you want to put Mahomes fourth and say that Mahomes runs the slate from here against an easy schedule, goes 16-1, and that, he fixes his stats, then I could see that. But I kind of lean Barkley in that head-to-head now that Mahomes' case is somewhat deflated with the perfect season gone. That would be my bet in the market. All right, this Sunday night, two teams battle for playoff positioning when Jalen Hurts going to have to get him out of the promo for the real MVP candidate on that team, Saquon Barkley, and the Eagles fly west for a clash with Matthew Stafford and the Rams. Coverage of the matchup begins at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock.
As you all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up to BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE, and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code BETEDGE. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your first bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code BETEDGE when you sign up. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE and get your $1,500 first bet offer today.
Okay, let's close out talking some basketball. Most improved player market, Drew. I think this is the wonkiest market on the board. Jalen Williams is plus 550 and the joint favorite with another Jalen Johnson at plus 550 as well. I think there was a brief period where you could make the case that the top 5 favorites for most improved player were all named Jalen or Jaden. But I think we've probably moved past that brief era. Dyson Daniels has been the hot mover in that market. He's 9-1. LaMelo Ball, RJ Barrett, Cade Cunningham, and Franz Wagner are the next names up. Do you have any bet in this market?
Yes, it's on Franz Wagner, who I think makes his first All-Star appearance this year as he has steadied the ship in Orlando in the absence of Paolo Banchero, on top of the fact that he's as good as we knew he was, and he's getting a little bit of shooting variance to the good at long last, which has really helped kind of improve his overall offensive impact on the game. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills looking at the top of the board with Jalen Williams and Jalen Johnson there, because I feel like by the time we got to the end of last season, I feel like we knew these guys were as good as they're playing now. And so this is like a lagging kind of indicator that these guys are good. And I don't know if either Williams or Johnson is that likely to get an all-star spot right now. The West is pretty crowded for those forward opportunities, and Williams may be a little bit on the outside there. Jalen Johnson's and the Hawks may be a little bit overlooked. Actually, I have no idea what the All-Star picture is going to look like in the Eastern Conference this year. But I still think that most improved player needs to be anchored to that first-time All-Star type of level. the idea that Dyson Daniels is in the All-Star mix is very tough for me to wrap my head around. I don't think that's true. And similarly, RJ Barrett, some of these other names near the top, I just feel like has to be it's just kind of sloppy bookmaking. They haven't drifted these guys because there's no way that there's realistic candidacy for the likes of the Norm Powells and the Zubac's and the Grady Dicks of the world, I don't think. And I think the other kind of names to mention after Franz Wagner are Cade Cunningham. His specific growth leading to the Pistons being a viable team for a playoff spot is notable, and I think he's going to start getting more credit for that, even if his counting stats don't really leap off the page at you. And then I think there is definitely a case to be made for a player like Evan Mobley, who to me at least seems to have always people have been waiting for him to kind of make the leap to all-star status. And with as well as the Cavaliers are playing overall, and his particular, contributions on both sides being pretty important to their growth as a team, I think he could start getting some attention in this market. So my short list would look like Wagner, Cunningham, and Mobley, and I think a lot of the rest of these names near the top are kind of dead money.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of the names at the top. So Jalen Williams, I think to your point, his biggest issue has always been that he's a third-year player, and any leap that he would make is probably going to be just considered linear improvement. So I think for him to actually win the award, he would have to vault into being, a third-team All-NBA kind of guy, average 26 and 5. His issue, too, is that he had a really high efficiency mark last year, which is almost certainly going to go down. And he's just not quite getting... I thought he was completely dead when Chet was healthy, and Chet getting injured opens the door a little bit. And I would still put Jalen Williams as one of the top 5-6 favorites. But now, he's just not getting huge usage. He scored 14 points the other night on 23% usage against the Mavs. He was at 22% usage. That can change, but I think it's uphill for him. Jalen Johnson, having watched a fair bit of Hawks basketball, I just don't think he has the offensive game to absorb much more scoring usage. He's just hard when can't really dribble. He's not a great off the bounce shooter. And he was putting up big stats for a while, but that was in games where, they were missing a lot of guys. Like DeAndre Hunter was out. Trae Young missed the game. Bogdan Bogdanovic is out at the moment. He's going to come back. And so I think that when the Hawks are fully healthy, Johnson's usage just isn't going to get there. Dyson Daniels, I think actually might be more likely to win than Jalen Johnson, just because he is a different kind of case, and there's a chance there could be a paradigm shift. And you could argue that people like him are the type of players who should win, but and he could go from 5 to 15 points per game, but that case just doesn't typically win, particularly on a team that's median outcome is 32 and 50. So I think Daniels, it's uphill there. LaMelo Ball was the rookie of the year, existing all-star on a team that's not very good. I don't see it there. RJ Barrett, his team is a disaster. Cade Cunningham, who on merit might have a better case than in reality, because the counting stat bump is just kind of non-existent at the moment. Franz Wagner has gone from +1 box plus minus to +6. Yeah. He is, I think, arguably... I would have Franz as the single most likely player to win the award, but he has imperfections too. The usage will go down when Paolo comes back. Also, having watched a lot of Magic basketball as well to complement the Hawks basketball, which is a completely different viewing experience, all defense versus all offense. Yeah. Franz, I don't really think he has the game to be efficient as a number one scoring option, but he's getting better. It's just you give Franz the ball, top of the arc, 10 seconds left on the shot clock. He calls over, Jalen Suggs or whoever to set a screen. It's it just doesn't feel like good things are going to happen out of this action. Or Franz going ISO at the top of the key. He can dribble okay. He dribbles well for his size, but he doesn't dribble great. He doesn't have a ton of moves. The jumper is a bit better, I think, but not amazing. But he's getting monstrous volume at the moment, and the shot is going in enough. So I think that you just hope for the shot to go in at a slightly lucky level, and the usage to drop off a bit when Paolo comes back. But if Franz can be 27 a game while Paolo is out, and then drop back to 23, 24, and first-time All-Star 25 and 5, efficiency stable, slightly up because he's making more threes this year, and advanced stats off the board, I probably feel better about that case than I do any other individual player.
Yeah, I think that's all well said. He's getting up an extra 3 per game this year, which actually 1.2. And I don't know, at least from watching the handful of games, what do we have, 5 with Paolo? In those games, it did feel like his role, like I was excited about it, having already bet it. Like I was like, okay, now this is like kind of ideal, like for him to be able to get to the 24. I feel like he needs to get to 24-ish points per game.
Yes, that's a minimum. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's possible. Yeah, it's definitely possible. But he kind of needs Powell back there. And I don't really have a good gauge on how much longer it's going to be before we start getting positive reports. So Christmas.
Maybe a little bit before then. He seems to be moving all right on the sideline in street close Paolo. I think the thing with Franz, and someone who's on Franz, I was kind of hoping for Paolo's absence to linger and go as long as possible so that Franz can get as much usage as possible. But having watched these games, I'm not sure it's the worst thing if Paolo comes back at some point, because I think Franz is his ultimate destiny on offense is to be that kind of secondary creator, creating off of someone creating an advantage for him. I don't think this like Franz and the triple threat thing can sustain for a whole season. He's going to get a little ugly with the efficiency. But the key for him is that it looked like the team might be a disaster with Paolo out when they were loose, but now they've like stabilized. Now they're like a hot team and a good story. And so he's got that anchoring. They have an easy schedule the next couple of weeks too. So I think Franz is the guy. I think there's still meat on the bone at current prices.
Yes.
Cool. All right, we are done. Don't forget to check out NBCsports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. Also a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From myself and Drew, we'll see you soon.